This is Chester Moore, and we are here at the Hunt Fish Podcast Summit, the 5th annual Hunt Fish Podcast Summit. And, most of these panel discussions have been about hunter advocacy and conservation, which are like incredibly important issues. But we wouldn't get to that point if we didn't have like an outdoor origin story and something that inspired us to go to the great outdoors. So we're going to talk about motivations and inspiration of the great outdoors. But first, before we do that, let's just go along and introduce our panel. Just say your name and your affiliation.
My name is Brent McDuff. I'm a wildlife conservation economist, and I study conservation history and taxidermy history.
My name is Rebecca Jones. I am an outdoorswoman and also a board member for the Dallas Safari Club, Texas Wildlife Association, and her Upland.
I am Josh Schwencke. I am the executive chef and owner of Gastronomy out of San Antonio, and I travel the country teaching wild game cooking, and I have the honor of being the executive chef of the Wild Sheep Foundation and Women Hunt.
I'm Jason Paul with Sneaky Pants Fishing. I'm also a full-time teacher, and I have a fishing club with kids.
Chad Walker. I've got a nonprofit, Able Outdoors, and it was a magazine, and now it's a TV series.
All right, so let's start with you. What inspired you to get involved in the great outdoors?
Oh my gosh. Well, just at a young age, I fell in love with hunting and fishing growing up, and after my injury, I had a paralyzing accident. After that, it was the one thing that brought me back, gave me hope, and really kept me going. So that's my inspirational story. It's a lot more than that, but that's the base of it.
Yeah. So have you found after your injury that the outdoors gives you motivation to go through some of the challenges you face?
Oh, for sure. Because for me, as long as I could do that, then I could do everything else. Life would be worth living. So for me, it was like, okay, what's the one thing that I can't live without? And that was it. So it was kind of like my therapy. It still is.
I understand. Rebecca, so what got you into this whole outdoors world?
Well, I'm Australian. Let's start there. So I feel like, it's a rite of passage as an Australian to essentially be outside. No, I have a lot of siblings, and, my parents worked multiple jobs. And when they had free time and they were trying to figure out a cost-effective way to keep a bunch of kids busy and engaged, they took us outside and released us into the wild. And so, my dad taught me to fish. We were never sort of above water hunters per se, but we did a lot of fishing, we did a lot of hiking, and really, we grew up outside in the woods or at the beach. And so to me, it started with family and it continues with family, community.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Stinky Pants Fishing, the name just caught me. So first off, tell me what that is about, and then tell me how you got involved in the great outdoors.
All right. Well, it's named after my son. So I've been coming up on 18 years of doing this. And so I had my son same time I started the business. So I was elbow deep in poopy diapers. So the name seemed like, it would stick. Whether you liked it or hated it, you'd probably remember it. So that's kind of how I came about the name. And the outdoors has always been my happy place. And it never ceases to disappoint, whether it's the beauty or the challenge of trying to figure out whatever the fish or animal you're going after. You can go out there with people, little kids, old people. You can it's always welcoming no matter who you're with and how you're doing it, and it's always different. God's blueprints out there, and so it's a great place to get out and see, and you never get tired of it. So.
Brent, I know you're outdoors genesis. We just talked about it, but you came from a sort of unconventional way compared to what was.
Well, I've always loved animals. That's where it started. So being crazy about animals brought me to conservation, and conservation is what brought me to hunting. And the fact that I could support conservation and get food from the same place, supporting conservation with my dollar instead of the grocery store, that was a big motivator for me, and that was sort of a genesis moment.
All right, Josh?
I actually grew up spending half my childhood practically on a German farm about an hour west of here. And we knew where our food came from. Being a wild game chef is kind of the end goal of knowing not only where our food came from, but speaking about what you were just speaking about, is bridging the gap of breaking bread together. And I grew up hunting. I grew up fishing. My late father I still have his 30-30 that I still hunt with every once in a while. And it was always it was a resource, and it was something that as a family, we would pull all of our resources together and break bread over the same table. And I built this company to kind of be a return back to that quality of life and how I feel that should be, is everybody having that love and that lure for the outdoors and treating it as a resource and feeding themselves.
Mine came from growing up fishing and hunting with my dad, but, equally, seeing Jaws as a kid and being the weird kid that wanted to get in the water, watching Jacques Cousteau, Ocean Specials, Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom programming, and getting a hold of every single wildlife book, fishing and hunting magazine or whatever that I could, because I was like Brent, obsessed with animals. So for me, I love hunting and fishing, and I hope I never have to stop hunting and fishing. But my love of animals in general is just equal. So I'm just as happy being out, taking pictures of an elk as I would be hunting an elk. Mm-hmm. However, there's that moment that backstrap of that big graze right now. So this is a question for anyone. Has there ever been a particular experience, in a hunting or fishing or just wildlife viewing setting, that cemented that you wanted to do something to help the resource, or maybe to help other people enjoy the resource?
Yeah, I'm happy to
go for it.
jump in very quickly. It was the first time I ever went on a hunt, and it was a turkey hunt. And a colleague that I worked with was going hunting, and I kind of invited myself along, because I learned early, don't wait to be invited, just insert yourself in there if you want it. And so I asked if I could come along, and there was just this moment where we were sitting up on the ridge, and early mornings, but we were sitting up on the ridge and being there as the world started to wake up and to hear animals and birds and noises, and to see the way that light hit the environment that we were in. And I'd never felt more connected to the outdoor space in that moment. And that sealed the deal. We weren't even hunting at that point. We were just waking up with the world. Mm-hmm. And it just was monumentally life-changing for me.
Because if you had just gone out there at that time of morning for no reason, you'd be a crazy person.
Right.
But all of a sudden you put a fishing rod in your hand, or you give yourself that I'm going to go hunting. Now all of a sudden you're out there and you get to see all that. And why would you have done that otherwise?
Right.
I can stand in the middle of a river and I just look nuts. But if I have a fishing rod, now I'm doing something, and I get to experience everything that comes along with being out there.
It's quite literally the lure that gets you out into the wilderness. It's the task that you're doing something difficult in a beautiful setting, and it makes you appreciate that setting even more. So, yeah.
100%.
So I had one recently. This comes to mind. I took some friends of mine who aren't hunters at all, took them out to some acreage that we have out in the Texas Hill Country. These guys that never been hunting, they know that I teach hunting for a living, and they were like, hey, can we kind of, I'm just going to get to the point. They wanted a free class from me. We'll take care of the beer, you just supply the hunting. And so we went out to this small plot of land, 44 acres. So no deer to be seen, no hogs to be seen, but a lot of rabbits. So at the end of the weekend, I ended up getting this one little cottontail, and we were eating other things, but around the campfire, I sat there and I actually processed this rabbit with him, and I saw this connectivity that these gentlemen had to never having been around doing something that is the origin of us feeding ourselves. is taking the life of an animal. And I speak very highly of not only the conservation aspect, but the very real spiritual aspect that comes with taking an animal's life for you to feed yourself. And there was this moment, and it's not really even an aha moment, but it's a moment that I even have the video on my phone, and I'm sitting here and I'm cutting up this rabbit and I'm talking about its organs. I'm talking about how this could be very relatable to a deer in some aspects. And so as I'm going through it, I look up, and all 4 of these guys were just in awe of this. And I'm sitting here going, this is something I do all the time, but they're sitting here going, it speaks to something that is inside of every man and woman, it translates into like what we're supposed to do is pay homage to this animal, but we're also supposed to feed ourselves. So how do you wrestle with those type of things? And just seeing that juxtaposition between what is very convenient and peaceful and what is difficult and sometimes violent is kind of where we need to be as humans. And seeing that in their face at that time was beautiful, because they were just like ear to ear, just grinning, and not even like a sadistic, like, yeah, that was great, but very concerned at that moment. Well, yeah. And I was like, okay, time to wrap it up, boys. But it was very much a moment of like realization, like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be feeling. And every person put through that type of context can't help but feel that way. So, yeah. Jason?
I don't think there's just one time, but I think there's so many times, like when you get in the right situation, kind of like she was talking about, where you paddle in the back on a marsh or something and you're around those fish and they don't know you're there, and you get to see whether you make a cast or not. It's impressive. And then, to your point, like when I'm teaching some of these kids who've never fished, you kind of relive it. It kind of brings you back to your grassroots, and you're seeing the excitement, and they don't care about how big it is or what species. They're just so excited to catch something, which is good, because as you kind of work your way up the pecking order, you try to get to certain levels, and then you don't appreciate some of the things. If it's not a trophy, you lose that love for it, which we shouldn't do that. So being around kids for the first time, or just anyone for the first time, it can kind of refresh that fire that lit you up when you were a kid.
What about you, Chad?
Is it my turn? I'm lucky. I get to get people out to come back into hunting fish that they thought it was lost to them. So last year I met this lady in Lafayette, Louisiana, doing a 5K, and she a higher quad than me, and she wanted to go hunt, and I was like, well, you're talking to the right person. I brought her on our group teal hunt last year, and she had hunted in 29 years since she got hurt and shot her first duck. And then she's like, I want to go deer hunt. I was like, all right. And her husband was like, thanks a lot. He was happy about it. So I set her up with a guy in Louisiana who does a group hunt. She went and shot a doe, and now she got drawn to go to Wyoming this fall. It's just super cool to be able to see somebody like that or help them. Usually not after 30 years. Sometimes it's people just 6 months or a year or two, but I get to relive that a lot every year. So that's special for me
That's awesome.
to watch them have their first times or first time back.
Yeah, so that kind of segues into my next question is, on just a personal level, has there ever been a dark time in your life, and you've all had them, when you went into the outdoors, you kind of saw the light for the first time again, or something clicked in you and you're like, you know what, I can get through this. Anybody ever had that moment in life?
Well, why are you looking at me?
Well, you just basically showed.
Of course, yeah. So for me, just because I thought it was lost to me and there was no information back. I got hurt so long ago, it was before the internet was a baby. So I had no idea that it could be done or how it could be done, and we just kind of kept after it. Failed a bunch of times first, so it was really dark for a while, until that one time where all it takes is that one shot, and you're like, okay, I can do it. I can breathe again. So that was it. The light was on. I heard the angels singing.
Mm-hmm. Angels singing. So my dad died on a hunting trip with me in 2014. right on the Mexico border in Duval County and Jimbaugh County, and he died cleaning the second biggest bucket of his life. He just fell down and died right in front of him, and it was hard to deer hunt after that, because like I went duck hunting with my buddies and I fished a lot of them by myself, but almost all of my deer hunting at some level was around my dad.
Sure.
You know, so deer hunting in particular, it wasn't like I felt this dark cloud or anything. It's just like I kind of like, you know, maybe I don't want to deer hunt anymore. I'd actually thought about going out and not ever deer hunting again. I had plans of going out there and burying my dad's deer rifle on that ranch and just saying, you know, I'm not going to deer hunt. I'll go duck hunting, go fishing, But I had a buddy of mine who, you know, got me into the cheapest deer lease in the world, close to my house, and he kept bugging me to go hunting, you know, and that was kind of a slow process of that. And I went out and I got a nice buck, and that was clear, you know. But what really made me want to still like pursue deer hunting and just hunting, you know, the way I did as a kid and with my dad was not even with a gun in my hand, it was with a camera in my hand, you know, because I was out and I had started this quest in 2019 to start getting involved in photographing wild sheep and stuff. And I took a photo of my first Rocky Mountain Bighorn. He was a beast too. He's an awesome, beautiful animal. And I was a kid from West Orange, Texas. It lives at 14 feet elevation. You're at 12,500 feet. And I remembered me and my dad would, make scrapbooks as a kid, and we would cut out pictures of outdoor life and field stream stuff we want to go hunt and fish. And I found those scrapbooks after Dad died, and most of them were like wild sheep, turkeys, things I'm into now. So I went back to that and I realized that seed was planted in my dad when I was like 5. So that just kind of clicked in me about like kind of snapped me out of whatever that was and wanted me to know that, you know, this whole experience, whether it's hunting, fishing, all of it's important to me as a person, and it got me motivated to go back and do it.
So that's a perfect segue into kind of my contribution to that is having lost my father, and just like I said, an hour west of here is where he passed away. He passed away on the family farm at 4:30 in the morning. Poured himself a cup of coffee. He was gone by 4:45. And so after he passed, as a family does, we kind of look at, okay, who and being his oldest child, I was able to kind of go, okay, you know what, these things are important of his that I would really like for myself. And his Glenfield 3030 was exactly that for me. Viewfinder on it, or the optic on it is massive. It looks like a massive screen on the back. It's just old school as can be. But going back out into the outdoors and hunting after his passing in 2008 was something that was, it was transformative, because I'm sitting here hunting hogs with the same rifle he hunted hogs with when he was a kid. And it was something that it melted me, because I'm sitting underneath this live oak tree and I'm waiting for these hogs to pass through this little creek, and I'm just there to kind of feed myself and, you know, spend some time in the wilderness alone. And I look, and on the back of the stock, he in the craziest font that I could think of, he sat there with a knife and carved DPS, his initials, in the back of the gun. And I'm gonna get emotional talking about it, but it was something that I, like, at that moment, I didn't hunt the rest of the time there. Yeah. I just sat underneath this tree, watching this creek and watching these boar run through the center of it, and had this moment of thankfulness, I guess. And then 2 weeks later, I'm back at the family farm, and we're out here doing whatever, and I had that 30-30 with me, and my uncle comes out, and he sees that 30-30, and I walked away from the truck, and I come back out, and he's on the tailgate of the truck weeping, because he had so much memory and good memories tied to him and his family member hunting with this rifle. And it was something that I was just like, two grown Bavarian men on the back of this truck in this farm, like weeping our eyes out, missing this guy. And it was a beautiful and very sobering moment. So
yeah, thanks for sharing.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I think that's a good place to sort of what I want to wrap up, like where we can go from that, because that's carrying on a legacy. Mm-hmm. Me getting over my stuff and, getting back out of the deer blind was carrying on the legacy. My dad would be like, what the heck are you doing? Go back out and deer hunt, So as we move forward, I think a vision here of the Hunt Fish Podcast Summit is conservation of our resources and advocacy for people to get involved. So I would just like everyone to sort of quickly share where and how they are doing that, or where they see a great opportunity to get more people to experience this beautiful, heartfelt thing that we experience in the outdoors.
So I'm very lucky that that's a consistent part of what I do is talking to non-hunters and taking new hunters afield. And I live in New York City, and I'm bringing them out to the Catskills with groups with hunters of color and backcountry hunters and anglers, and we take new hunters out all the time. And the sort of, I don't know, the forgotten urbanites who do also have that feeling in them, and that they didn't really know they were searching for, but you can see it in their faces the first time they go out, and they have that experience, and they bring home food to their friends and their family, and they get to have this community experience in the outdoors. And I know that the time that I spent in the outdoors, I really enjoyed, but I never really got hiking. You go up the trail, you come down the trail, you never saw any animals. And the minute I started hunting, it was like, oh, I'm seeing animals. Maybe I'm hunting turkey, but I'm seeing all these deer, and they're doing cool stuff. And I'm out early in the morning, and I'm seeing the beavers, and having that experience. People in these urban and suburban areas, they want it too, and they are crazy for it. And so I try to make sure they know that that is attainable for them too. The first deer I ever shot was in the suburbs of New Jersey, and they can have that. They can fill their freezer, and I want to make sure we're out talking to those folks too, and not forgetting that they're out there and they want a part of it too. We just need to offer it to them.
That's very good.
Yes. Well, I'm keeping it very simple in my backyard, meaning, I have a 7-year-old daughter, and essentially whatever we do today is what she and they and everyone in her generation and the generations to follow is going to inherit. So we can leave him something amazing, or we can leave him something terrible. I would prefer to leave him something amazing, whether it's what we do, with land that we own and run, or whether it's sort of, public land and public access that we need to protect for people as well. So, for me, it's really about multi-generations, because there's a heck of a lot of people across all sorts of ages that need to be either engaged or re-engaged, and I feel passionately about that. But just a little personally for me around that next generation, I'm making sure that I feel good that my daughter's going to inherit something great in terms of what's going on in the world is important when it comes to animals, especially animals. Gosh, she loves animals, and the habitats in which they live. So that drives me.
Mine, I'll make it short. Mine comes down to food and feeding. It's something we were talking about earlier, that it's we eat more than 3 times a day. We should be eating the best of what's available to us. The best of what's available to us is wild. We need to treat it as a resource. And you've seen how we've treated other proteins as resources, and we've kind of screwed that up. We have a really good chance now as hunters to be ambassadors for non-hunters to understand clean protein, and understanding conservation's tied to, so it's all about feeding.
I try to bridge the gap. So like the stories you're talking about, mostly it's passed down. Your dad taught you, well, some, kids don't have dads, or maybe their dad doesn't hunt or fish. And so as a teacher, and then just leveraging my company, like I'm setting up fishing trips for my church and things like that, but just getting people outdoors that don't have the chance to go outdoors because they don't have someone in their life that knows what they're doing, and taking them out there. And so that's going to open up, hopefully, the same love that I have for kids that maybe don't get that opportunity now.
Awesome.
Me, I'm trying to cast a wide net. Not just with able hunters, though. That we actually took some kids out. Part of the Texas Youth Hunting Association. We put a hunt together for them, and we're going to do another one next year. And I try to get young people involved to come help on some of the able group hunts we do. And if everybody you can bring in, they're going to pass that down to their generation. It's just that's important to get them hooked while they're young. I kind of bring them back when they're older, but it's better when because they didn't get to grow up like I did out in the country hunting with a BB gun and pellet gun and a single shot, up and up and up like that. So it's a blessing to be able to do that and to be able to share that with young kids or I do mostly people that have been injured and don't know they can do it. I'll bring them back then. So I've been really lucky. So I pay it back when I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me and my wife have a ministry outreach. Our mission is to bring the love of Christ to hurting children through wildlife encounters. And within that, we also have a built-in mentoring program to mentor them. And we do expeditions in places like Texas and Colorado, Wyoming, work with the National Bighorn Sheep Center this year, doing some stuff with Wyoming. And our target is specifically kids that have been through hell. And let me mention urban kids and places like that. Well, it's just kids that have been through the worst. And a lot of times they don't have any chance at anything. And so the idea of bringing them into the outdoors is like extra inspirational for me. And so what's cool about what I've heard is that everyone is like a personal level of your child and other people around in your community. It's food, or it's underprivileged kids, and it's, it's urbanites, and it's just hurting children. It's people who've been through, physical challenges. And I think that's something that come out of this Hunt Fish Podcast Summit and agree that we're all moving forward and keep the charge up of inspiring others to go in the outdoors, because it seems like the outdoors can inspire the heck out of us. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.